Hi, I'm Mike Schwartz, and thank you for taking some time to make sure your ESOL rosters are updated and learning how to add a student to your ESOL roster. At any time you've got questions as you're doing this, please reach out to myself or Wendy Perrin. We're both eager to help you anytime. We don't want you to struggle. We're going to talk about two different types of methods for adding students. One is on the ESOL roster screen. There's a tab called Potentially Missing Students, and we'll talk about those students and how you can add those. And the second is the Add Student button and the different ways you might be adding students in general. And there's kind of three versions of that. There's students that may already be in another school's ESOL roster, and so you're kind of taking that student from their roster and bringing them to your roster. They'll be adding students who are maybe in nobody's roster this year, but they were in the system last year, and so we'll be kind of adding this returning student, and then adding new students who may not be in ESOL at all right now. So we'll talk about those three or multiple different options. I'm going to actually go live in here and do it for you. So I'm going to switch over to a test system, and this is a test system. We're not looking at real SASID numbers or assessment IDs. Those have been all kind of changed and hidden, so we're not violating any privacy. I'm logged in here as Barrington, and you'll see that Barrington has a series of students already in their roster. They also have what's called these potentially missing students. And you may, if you see 0 here, it means you've already taken care of them or there aren't any. But these are students who are in our ESOL system last year or this year, but they're not in the school that that we believe that student's enrolled. So we, as you may know, schools submit BOIs and AOIs. These are i4see submissions. They're enrollment submissions that tell us where students are enrolled in school. Those come through the i4see system throughout the year. If one of those enrollment records indicates that that student's in your school, but the ESOL roster doesn't have that student in your school, then they'll show up in this potentially missing students tab. So if you click on this tab, it will take a second, and then it'll bring back any of those students. And so again, in this example, these are two students who, we believe they may be in this case, a early childhood learning center or the Barrington Elementary School, because of the fact that they are in your school's i4see system in one of your enrollment records, like your AOI or BOI. However, these students are actually in another school, and it could be they were in the school this year, or they could have been in the school last year. So if this is a case where this student is now transferred to your school, you simply click Add Student, and that'll take this student 164453139 or whatever. Again, this isn't the real STACID. And you'll specify which of your schools the student is in. And you click Add Student. And this will now take this student, and it'll take it out of your missing roster students, and it'll add it to your student roster. And so now you'll see we've got 6 students here. Please note, because I'm using some test data and I manipulated things, these numbers aren't showing up exactly correctly. Obviously, if you had moved 1 from here to here, this would actually say 6, and this would now say only 1 left. But it's because I'm in this test system. And so now the student is added to my roster. So that's the first way you might add a student to your roster. The second way you might add a student to your roster is clicking Add Student. Now, I'll click this right now, but you'll notice I didn't select the school. You have to tell us what school you want to add that student to before you click that Add Student. So here it's telling you, please select this school. So I'll go ahead and select the elementary school. I'll click Add Student. And now it's going to bring up a dialog and allow me to specify the student that I want to add. You'll need to know the SACID number. And so in this case, I've got a sample SACID number here. And I first find that student. And this is an example of a student that already exists in somebody else's roster. They were in there, they might have been in their school earlier in the year, but now they've come to my school and I want to add them. And so you'll see the student, it's going to say this student is currently in roster in somebody else's school. Do I want to take the student? And so this is a case where the student maybe started the year in one school, they're now coming to my school, so I'm going to say, yes, I'm going to take the student. And at this point, since the student's already been entered by somebody else, I don't have to enter the specific information about what language they speak or those types of things. It confirms it just to make sure you want to confirm it. And again, this student now, which ended in 148 was the SACID number, has now been added to my roster. You will want to go in here, and you always want to make sure the program types are complete. So you will want to go in here and you can edit the student. Maybe the service minutes has changed because the service minutes is slightly different for your school. So you can go ahead and you could change the service minutes. Um, you should enter a program type, and then you can go ahead and save this student's record. So that's a second example of adding a student. This is a student, like I said, that currently was in another school district. You could also click Add Student and add a student that maybe wasn't in anybody else's school this year. This is the first time that they're being identified. Maybe they went out of state. The first time they're being identified as ESOL in your school. Maybe they were in, this is a case where maybe they were in ESOL a prior year, but they've been in nobody's school this year. Maybe they went, as I started to say, maybe they went to Massachusetts or another state for the beginning of the year and they came back to New Hampshire. So in this case, I'm going to find the student. It doesn't say the student's currently anywhere else, so I'm going to add the student to roster. And I'm going to note that this student was in our ESOL system last year. That's why, because of that, we already know the student's country of birth, their primary language. We know what kind of hours they were receiving last year. The system will automatically set the student to second year monitoring because the student in this case was first year monitoring last year. So that's not something you typically would change. The student now is in second year. You would want to update the service hours. You would want to select the program type. You are supposed to put a WEEN assessment in here. Evidently this hadn't been put in the prior year. And you click Add Student. And so this is the second case where now we're adding a student, but this student wasn't in anybody's school this year. There's the added step of just completing any of that information. And now this student has been added to our roster. The final one I'm going to do is one that is brand new to the state and never been in ESOL in our state. So in this case, again, I'm going to click Add Student. I will look for the student. In this case, again, because this student hasn't ever been in ESOL, we're not going to see any kind of taken information. This will be a brand new student. We're going to say go ahead and add student to roster. In this case, when the screen comes up to add the information, this is a brand new student, so it's not going to know what the program was or country of birth or those types of things. So I've got to put that in. I'm just going to put some random information in here. Say the student entered in 2018, maybe they came from another state. So the status, I will say, is currently receiving services. I will enter service hours. You have to enter in the program. I'll say that they had an access test was used to determine their eligibility. So I've entered in the information. I click Add Student. And now the student's been added to the roster. So those are a few different examples of the ways that you can enter students into the roster. Please, if you've got any questions, let us know. It's important that you include students throughout the year as they are added to your ESOL program. Again, let me just switch over to our slide here. Last thing I just want to show you is our contact information once again. Please do reach out to us anytime if you've got questions. Thank you again.